Good evening, WLKY meteorologist Eric Zernick here breaking into programming because we do now have a tornado warning that has been issued for portions of the WLKY viewing area that I want to tell you about. This is for portions of Meade and Harrison County in Indiana. This goes until 9:45, so it goes for just about a half hour or so because we're watching for the possibility of a little bit of some rotation trying to spin up along this line of some very strong gusty showers that has been pushing through the area over the last hour or so and getting closer and closer to the metro Louisville area. That will probably arrive here in downtown Louisville just before 10 o'clock. But again, it's for this tornado warning that you can see. That's the red box inside the severe thunderstorm warning that was issued 5 or so minutes ago for portions of Meade and Harrison County as well. That does clip portions of Crawford County. But again, it's mainly for this area just to the south of Corydon, just to the west of Valley Station. It's basically right along the Ohio River, getting ready to move out of Meade County and pushing into portions of Harrison County. That's where we have that possibility of a rotation. So if you live in basically southern Harrison County in Indiana, that's where you should be starting to take your safe location for this possibility of a tornado. Again, this is just radar indicated, nothing confirmed, but they're seeing enough that they went ahead and did go ahead with this tornado warning for that area. And it's again for that little notch. And when you get these little notches, that's where you can get just a little bit of some brief spin up rotation causing some of those very small tornadoes, but definitely something that we want to keep a very close eye on. But again, let's go full to the graphic so we can really show you what I'm talking about and see what the National Weather Service is saying as far as this is concerned. So yeah, again, radar indicated with this system, and it's for that right in that location that I mentioned. Mainly southern Harrison County is what we're really watching for, just to the south of the Corydon area. And what we're watching for is, again, that little notch that you see here. That's where we have the possibility of a little bit of some rotation trying to form. So it's pretty much now out of Meade County and moving into the far southwestern portions of Harrison County, right along the Ohio River. That's that blue line that you see there. That's the Ohio River. So what we're really focusing in on is this area right here to the south and west of Corydon. Again, this warning goes until 9:45, so it's got about another 20 to 25 minutes on it, and it's located within this larger severe thunderstorm warning associated with the entire line that's moving through portions of Meade and Harrison County now. This is just one of a couple of different warnings that we have. We also have another severe thunderstorm warning just off to the north that we're keeping a close eye on, and actually they've pushed another one out that goes a little bit farther and clips the northern portions of Jefferson County, but does a lot of Clark County over into Floyd County. We got this one also getting ready to push into portions of Clark County back into Floyd County for along this line. Again, you see that little bow. That's what's concerning them a little bit. They haven't put a tornado warning on this, but that's where we could see that possibility of 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts associated with this strong line of gusty storms that had a report of doing damage farther off to the west earlier today, and it's now getting ready to push into our area. This too goes until 9:45. So again, these warnings have about 20 to 25 minutes left on them. If you live within these boxes, especially the Broom Hill area, that's where the strongest winds are getting ready to move through, along with Greenville. You're about to get the brunt of the storms. Hasn't quite made it to Floyd's Naubnet or New Albany, but you are in this box of that potential warning getting ready to move into your area. This is also just south of Henryville, New Perkins. You're just outside of the box, but definitely have seen the worst of the storms move through. It's really getting ready to head towards Henryville. Sellersburg, you're going to be next in line. You probably got about 10 minutes till you see the worst of it getting ready to move into your area. So we're going to be watching this very closely. Let's give you the big picture look of what we got. So here's that line moving just to the north of Madison, extending back towards the Brandenburg area, and then farther off down to the south and west. There's that tornado warning that we're watching for, mainly across portions of southern Harrison County. But this is the line that is working towards downtown Louisville and will likely get here in about a half hour's time, packing that punch with some very gusty winds up to 40 to 50 miles per hour. And at a brief moment, some pretty heavy rain, but that heavy rain band is pretty small. So it's only going to rain heavy at your area for about 10 minutes or so. And then the worst of it should be pushing off to the east. But within this line, we're getting some of those stronger storms to fire up and develop. But we'll go back to that tornado tornado warning here so I can kind of show you again the main issue of why we're on air, and is for this tornado warning that continues until 9:45 for portions of southern Harrison County. Again, this is pretty much just to the south and west of Corden. They continue to be shrinking that tornado warning, which is a good sign. They aren't expanding it, but again, it's mainly for this little notch right in here where we could see some of those stronger winds trying to develop along that line that extends up into portions of southern Indiana, prompting more of those severe thunderstorm warnings just off to the north of downtown Metro Louisville. So very dangerous situation as we head into this evening. This is definitely going to pack a punch as it moves through your community here over the next half hour to an hour or so as we head through the rest of our Sunday evening. So just kind of keep that in mind. Make sure you're being weather aware. If that alert goes off on your phone, take it as a sign that you want to stay inside, seek your shelter and the most interior place of your building, because this could pack some pretty good punch. Again, this is radar indicated, nothing confirmed, but we do have this tornado warning, which is why I'm on air with you right now for your Sunday evening. So we're continuing to keep a very close eye on this. Again, this is just to the south and west of the Corden area in Harrison County, southern Harrison County at that, just to the north of the Ohio River. Now, Brandenburg, you're about to get some pretty gusty winds as that line of storms is knocking on your doorstep. You're about to see it. Corden, you're probably getting some pretty gusty winds and some heavy rain as that line is beginning to make its way into your community at the moment. And again, as this moves through, it could have wind gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour. So definitely going to pack a punch. Even if they're not rotating, definitely could have some straight line wind damage with this. We've had some reports back towards Jasper of some trees on power lines and things like that. So the winds are definitely strong enough to cause a little bit of some isolated damage as it initially pushes into your area. So just kind of keep out for that. Listen to outside, see if you hear your trees trying to fall or break with this strong line of gusty winds moving into your area that we're continuing to watch. But again, we have that tornado warning for southern Harrison County that goes until 9:45. As mentioned, we're also tracking some other warnings across the region that are just to the north of downtown Metro. They include portions of Floyd and Clark County and does clip the very southeastern portions of Jefferson County just north of that. So again, we'll kind of put that up here, show you what that warning is, and show you that that one goes until 9:45 as well. So we're keeping a close eye on these two warnings. You can see pretty much through the New Perkins area, getting ready to move into Floyd's Knob, Sellersburg, Charlestown. You're going to be next in line. Henryville, you're probably getting some pretty strong gusty winds and some heavy rain as that moves through. The good news is we're no longer getting any lightning with these systems, so no rumbles of thunder, nothing like that, just those very strong gusty winds and at times some pretty heavy rain as that initial line moves into your area. And even just out ahead of that main line, that's where we're getting some reports of some 45 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts, which is enough to bring down some pretty sturdy tree limbs and things like that that maybe aren't the strongest of trees, or maybe get that wind caught just right to cause some damage and maybe could cause a few power outages if they do start to fall on some power lines in those areas. So that's what we're continuing to watch as we go through this evening, as this line continues to track its way through the area. So we're just keeping a very close eye on this line. Again, here in downtown Metro Louisville, I think we have about 15 to 20 minutes. It's probably going to get here just before 10 o'clock is when that main line, as I zoom out and show you, oh, looks like they've put another tornado warning out. So we'll zoom in down on that and show you that we got this new tornado warning. That's for mainly Meade County, but also the very southern portions of Harrison County as well. So both of these tornado warnings going for about another 15 minutes or so until 9:45, because they're also watching this notch that is developing, again, mainly north of the Ohio River in far southern Harrison County. But it's because of that little notch there that they're concerned for the possibility of a little bit of some rotation. So they've gone ahead and put out that tornado warning for this system as it begins to head towards Jefferson County. But at the moment, these are just radar indicated. Nothing has been confirmed, but enough that the National Weather Service is watching them closely along these little notches for the possibility of some quick spin-up tornadoes that could try to touch down as these begin to kind of work their way closer into the area. But even outside of that, along this line, we could still get easily 45 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts as it begins to work its way into our viewing area. So we're going to have to keep a very close eye on this line as it continues to work towards downtown Louisville and much of the metro area here as we go through the next hour or so. But again, the reason we're on air right now breaking in the programming is for these 2 tornado warnings that we're watching across portions of Harrison County in southern Indiana. That does clip portions of Meade County, and it looks like it also does try to get into portions of that's going to be Harding County. That sneaks up there all the way up towards the Ohio River. So those are the counties that have the tornado warnings. Again, I would say it's just the south and east now of Cordon that they're seeing that area for the possible rotation, probably right up in this location. So this is just west of the Ohio River in southern Harrison County. And then again, it's probably for this little notch to the north and east across the river from Brandenburg as you get into the far southern portion of Harrison County. Both of these go for another 15 minutes until 9:45. So if you live mainly, especially in southern Harrison County, that's where you should probably be taking shelter and heading to your safe location. That's an interior building and probably an interior bathroom without any windows or places like that to kind of shield yourself from any damage or debris that might be flying around as that line of gusty storms continues to work its way into the area. So that's what we're watching very closely here as we continue through your Sunday evening. It's been very warm out there. We broke records, hit 75 this afternoon. That was 5 degrees above the previous record. So we had unusually warm temperatures, and we're still hanging on to the low 70s. So there's that energy for this line of storms to work with those very warm temperatures for this time of year. It's also been very windy. That's coming in out of the south. And then as this front moves through, those winds are coming a little bit more out of the west northwest. So that gives you that little bit of some turning of the winds within the atmosphere. The southerly winds at the lower levels, the northerly winds the farther up you get. So that helps to get some of these brief little spin up rotations. And so that's why they've gone ahead and put out a couple of these tornado warnings for portions of mainly, again, southern Harrison County across the river in Indiana. But it also does include portions of Meade County. But I think the main area of concerns is this little notch here in far southern Harrison County. And then the other notch that we're watching, not looking as defined as it was earlier for the system, just to the south and east now of Cordon. You probably have seen the worst of it move through. It looks like you're now on the other side of that line, so that is some good news. That line extending up to the north in the portions of Floyd and Clark County. That's where we have some severe thunderstorm warnings that continue a little bit longer also until 9:45. So definitely keeping a very close eye on this line as it works through. And that's kind of what you get is when you get these little notches, that's where you could get some of those stronger winds developing. So these still have about 15 minutes or so. So we'll continue to be on air while these warnings continue. Again, they are just radar indicated. Nothing has been confirmed, but still something that we want you to pay attention to. Also, we'll go up to those other warnings that I was telling you about that we have just to the north of the metro and kind of talk a little bit more about those. So we'll zoom in up to those. Again, these also go until 9:45. They include portions of Floyd and Clark County. You can see the line getting very close to the Sellersburg area, not too far from Charlestown. Henryville looks like the worst is pretty much now moved through your community, so things should be quieting down a little bit or very shortly for you, but it is pretty much now crossing over 65 as it moves through Clark County. That line of storms now pushing east of 65, but also as you get down into Floyd County, so St. Mary's, Floyd Knobs, New Albany, that's where you're about to get ready to see the worst of this line of storms pushing into your area, bringing with it some of those very gusty winds, as mentioned, that we saw up to about 40 to 50 miles per hour, which is still enough to do some damage. We've had reports of some old barns out in the country out to the west that have been knocked over as this line moves through, as it's been bringing with it those very gusty winds. So that's just something to keep in mind, that yes, this has had a history of doing a little bit of some damage off to our west, and so that's why it's got our attention as it now continues to track through the area as we go into this evening. So again, Sellersburg, you're probably going to start to see the worst of it here very shortly, if not at the moment that we're going through right now. Charlestown, it's going to be knocking on your doorstep probably within the next 5 to 10 minutes. And then as you get closer to New Albany and Floyd's Knob, it's pretty much moving through your areas as well. And it won't be long before this starts to cross over the Ohio River and move into the metro. So we'll kind of zoom that out and show you how close it is to getting into the metro and getting ready to move into Jefferson County. You can see it is getting very close to the Ohio River. So as mentioned, I would say probably by about 9:45 here in downtown Louisville, we'll begin to see the worst of that line moving through. But the reason we continue to be on air is for these 2 tornado warnings that are continuing across areas of the viewing area just to the west of downtown Louisville, mainly in Harrison County in southern Indiana, but also as you get over across the river into portions of Meade County. And so it looks like now they're just gone ahead and issued a broad severe thunderstorm warning along that line. That does now include the metro. And I'm guessing that's going to go until probably 10:30. 10:40, let's see, till 10 o'clock. So yeah, this system is moving rapidly off to the east at about 50 miles per hour. So that just shows you the kind of wind energy the system has. Since it's moving that fast, it's not that hard to get some isolated wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. And so because of that, they've gone ahead and just issued this very broad severe thunderstorm warning to pretty much get the rest of us along that line as it begins to kind of work its way through. So it's becoming a very active weather map with all these different warnings popping up on you. So we'll go through this one more time. So the 2 red warnings that you see popping up, those are the tornado warnings, and the main reason that we've been breaking in the programming and giving you that update for the possibility of a little bit of some spin-ups along the main line that it's getting ready to push into downtown Louisville. And again, you can see they've now gone ahead and issued this very big, broad severe thunderstorm warning that goes until 10 o'clock, which includes a good portion of Jefferson County, Hardin County, and the northwestern portions as you get into Bullitt County. That includes Shepherdsville, Valley Station, downtown Louisville, and pretty much gets you over to Fern Creek as this line is quickly racing off to the east here this evening on your Sunday night. So do expect a pretty rough go here over the next hour as this line makes its way through downtown Louisville and much of the metro area here. But I would say as we get closer to about 11 o'clock, a lot of this will be getting to race its way off to the east and things will become much quieter. Now, it does look like an extended area of rain. So even once the initial line moves through, we're still going to have about 1 to 2 hours of some light to moderate rain on the back side of this, but it's not going to be quite as heavy or as windy as it initially moves into your area. Does look like they've given us an update trimming this tornado warning, which is some good news, but they're still going to keep it going for at least another 10 minutes or so until 9:45. But it does look like they've trimmed that to just include the far southeastern portions of Harrison County, just to the west of Valley Station on the other side of the Ohio River. And again, we also have this other tornado warning that mainly includes Meade County, but it also clips a large portion of southern Harrison County that goes until 9:45. So that's what we're watching for. It's going to continue to be tracking off to the east. What it is just these little notches that try to develop along the main line. That's where we could get a few of those little spin-ups to develop. But big picture shows just warnings up and down this line for the possibility of straight line winds near 60 miles per hour. We've gotten a lot of reports of 45 to 50 off to the west. So this is definitely going to be packing a punch as it continues to work through the viewing area here over the next half hour or so, as again, this large warning area goes until 10 o'clock. So this has about 23 minutes for it to work its way through a large portion of this area, and that does extend up into portions of southern Indiana, clipping Floyd County and a large portion of Clark County as well. So this is a pretty strong system that's working through on this Sunday evening. And again, that goes back to the energy that we had earlier today with the record high temperatures, as we're still sitting in the low 70s and upper 60s. So there's plenty of fuel for this narrow band of showers to work with, giving us that wind energy. And then it's a very strong system. So we got the strong winds on the backside. And so that's just what's causing a lot of upper level energy to work through, giving us all those gusty conditions. As you've noticed throughout most of the day, today, it has been very windy. And so now as the system moves through, it's just tapping into all that energy. So the good news is they're continuing to trim some of these warnings, which is some good news. But we still have the tornado warnings in effect for at least another 7 or 8 minutes or so for a good portion of southern Harrison County in Indiana, just on the other side of the river here from Valley Station in Jefferson County is where those tornado warnings are going. And then we have that large severe thunderstorm warning that includes much of the metro that goes until 10 o'clock this evening. So again, this line is moving very quickly. You can see as we zoom up and zoom in, it is pretty much now knocking on the doorstep of the Ohio River and getting ready to move very close into West Louisville, and won't be long before it moves into downtown. As we move up into southern Indiana, it looks like it's moving through New Albany and getting very close to the Clarksville area. Sellersburg, it has moved through. Charlestown, you're getting the worst of it right now with probably some very gusty winds and some heavy rain. And this line does continue to extend, even though we don't have warnings in this far northeastern portion of Clark County. You're still getting probably some very gusty winds and some heavy rain, and this also continues up into Jefferson County and Indiana as well as it's moving through the Madison area, Central, and Saluda as you get up into that location. But this is quickly racing off to the east. It looks like Scottsburg, you're already in the clear. You're just getting some of that light rain that's lingering behind it. Salem, New Perkins, you're also through the worst of it. So once the initial line moves through, it's going to end pretty quickly, and that's going to be the end of your severe threat for the rest of tonight. So a good portion of as you get up into Washington, over into Orange counties, up into southern Indiana, you can see even Scott County, you're now in the clear as that line has made its way through the location. Farther to the south, Hardinsburg, you've pretty much through the worst of it. That line getting very close, about another 10, 15 minutes away from Radcliffe. Elizabethtown, you probably have about another 20 minutes before that line gets to you. But the good news is for you, no warnings have been issued farther south. So for a large portion of our communities in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, not dealing with those warnings the farther south you get. But again, the metro does have that warning that goes until 10 o'clock for that line beginning to push through. And again, we continue to have these 2 tornado warnings in far southeastern Harrison County that go for another 4 minutes or so until 9:45. We'll stay on air as long as those are going to probably get you through this line as it gets its way through the metro before I jump off air. So we'll just stay with this and kind of continue to track this line as it is now, you can see across the river, getting very close to the Shively area. PRP, you're going to probably have the worst of this gusty shower activity moving through any minute now. Valley Station, too, you're pretty much next in line. I would say you're within 5 minutes of that line getting to your location. And again, what we're experiencing with this is the possibility for a little bit of some rotation, but more likely straight line wind damage of wind gusts close to 50 miles an hour is the biggest thing that we've been seeing as this system makes its way closer and closer to you as that line of showers and storms continues to work through here this evening. Yes, so it has been one of those kind of typical severe weather days that we get here in late December or early winter time when you have these warm air masses that come up, getting us into that record territory today. And then you have that strong cold front. It's the clash of the air masses that starts to get some of these stronger storms moving through. We were hoping with it getting into our location a little bit later in the evening, they would be on a little bit of a weakening trend, but it looks like they've pulsed up a little bit. And as I was mentioning, there wasn't that warning to the south. Now it looks like they've added a warning, including portions of, as you get through a large portion of Hardin County, as it heads towards E-Town and Radcliffe, you're now in that severe thunderstorm warning. And then for you guys, that goes until 10:15. Is again, this line is racing off to the east at 50 miles per hour. So yes, definitely stay weather aware. This is a good time to stay in your safe location as these line of storms is working through your area. Again, we continue with those tornado warnings, but it looks like they're they're probably going to let those expire here at 9:45. I don't see them continuing those. They're just going to go with these broad, severe thunderstorm warnings for that line of storms as it continues to now track across the Ohio River and makes its way into the metro and across and into much of Jefferson County. The good news is they're not issuing them as farther off to the north, so it looks like much of southern Indiana, for the most part, has that line clearing, and it's now moving into a large portion of Kentucky. But Clarksville and downtown Louisville, along with New Albany, it looks like you're next in line to get some of the strongest. Looks like it's through Sellersburg now. Charlestown, you're also pretty much through the worst of that line of storms. You're just now going to be dealing with some light showers and not quite as strong as winds as we go through the rest of this evening. The other thing that I've noticed as this front moves through, what I was talking about, is that major drop in temperature. So once this moves through, what you're also going to notice is your temperatures drop about 10 to 15 degrees in a matter of just 10 to 15 minutes. So once this front moves through, it's going to die down, but once it starts to die down, your temperature is really going to drop. You're going to fall back quickly into the 50s and then eventually 40s, and then by the time you wake up tomorrow morning, we'll be down into those 20s with wind chills into the single digits. So this is going to pack that 1-2 punch of not only the storms this evening, but the bitterly cold air that's going to be moving in through the overnight hours and with us as we get into our Monday. So a very active weather day. It's one of those just classic severe weather systems that we kind of get here as we move deeper into the evening. So just going to continue to track this. Again, we did have those 2 tornado warnings that is what initially brought us on air. But those are going to probably pretty much expire here in the next 15 seconds at 9:45. But what they're going to go with is just these very big, broad, severe thunderstorm warnings that encompasses the large area right along that line. As again, you can see Valley Station, PRP, Parkwood, Shively, and now as you get into downtown Louisville, that is where that line is beginning to move through, packing that punch with some very gusty winds and that little bit of some heavy rain as we now move deeper and deeper into this evening. They're also starting to trim some of those other warnings off to our north and west. Sounds like we're beginning to get some of that heavier rain here at the station. So that line has now made its way to us here along Melwood Avenue, just to the east of downtown. So yes, it is pretty much now moving through, as you can see with our camera on top of the building as we look back towards downtown. All that heavy rain that's now moving through downtown Louisville as that line is beginning to work through. But again, this line is a very thin line, and it's only going to last 10 minutes, and then it should be pushing out of you. But as it moves through, it is packing that punch. But there it is, as I was hoping. The tornado warnings that initially did bring us on air have been allowed to expire. So the good news is we're no longer tracking any potential tornadoes at the moment. What we are now just tracking is those straight line wind potential damage as this line continues to work its way through downtown Louisville and through much of the WLKY viewing here on this Sunday evening. So let's regroup. It is now 9:46. The tornado warnings that we had earlier have since expired, so that is the good news. But we're going to stay on a little bit and let this line get through the metro before we get off air as we continue with this severe thunderstorm warning that includes a large portion of Jefferson County that continues until 10 o'clock as this line is working its way quickly through the area at the moment. And as I was mentioning, the warnings that we had across southern Indiana that included a large portion of Clark County, you can see were allowed to expire also at 9:45. So they're expecting this line that has moved through Madison, getting ready to push towards the Bedford area and also pushing across the Ohio River into portions of Oldham County, getting very close to portions of Goshen, River Bluff, Prospect area. You're starting to get some pretty heavy rain as that line works in, but you are not under that warning as it looks like the winds aren't quite as strong farther north you get. So it looks like for portions of Oldham County, you're still going to get some pretty gusty winds as that line initially moves through, but they're not quite as strong as what we're seeing moving through downtown Louisville and much of Jefferson County. You can really see that here as we look closer towards the PRP area, Valley Station. And then as you get farther down, that's where we're seeing some of the stronger rain and probably some of the stronger winds associated with this system. And that's what had prompted those earlier tornado warnings. So I definitely think it's getting quite gusty for those in Valley Station, PRP, up towards the Shively area. And this is continuing to quickly race its way off to the east. Again, this line of storms moving to the east at about 50 miles per hour. So it is quickly racing through the area and allowing for that, but we're continuing to get some reports of trees and power lines down in the roadways up in the Clark County. So yeah, this is packing that punch and can cause some issues. We're getting some more reports around Bardstown Road of a large tree down blocking Interstate or US 31 in Clark County. Thankfully, that seems to be already removed by the fire department. So thanks to our crews out there helping to kind of get things cleared as we get some of these issues out there. But this is packing a good punch as it moves through the area, giving us those very strong winds. So let's regroup here and kind of show you what we're looking at across the area. So it's for this line of storms that is now making its way through Metro Louisville and much of Jefferson County. The good news is the warnings that we had across much of southern Indiana have been able to expire. So across a good portion of Clark County, no longer seeing the warnings, and Charlestown looks like the worst of it has moved through. It's now pushing over into Oldham County. Crestwood, you'll begin to see some of the stronger winds and heavier rain make its way into your area here probably within the next 5 to 10 minutes. LaGrange, same thing for you, and then that works its way up 71. But here's that big warning that we've been watching that goes for at least another 10 minutes or so until 10 o'clock as this line continues to race its way through Metro Louisville, now packing that punch of straight line winds of potentially 50 to 60 miles per hour. As I was mentioning, as it moved through portions of Clark County, that system did enough damage to bring down some trees and is causing some power outages as some of those trees maybe fell on some power lines. So definitely watching that very closely. And as it continues to work its way down to the south and then continues towards the Ratcliffe area. So this line is definitely starting to pick up in intensity a little bit and is definitely causing some damage as it quickly races its way through the areas. Pretty much now moving through much of Meade County and getting ready to move into a large portion of Hardin County. So again, Radcliffe, probably within the next 5 to 10 minutes, you'll really start to see the strongest winds and heaviest rains move into your area. For Elizabethtown, you probably still have another 10 to 15 minutes before it really gets towards you. This system still racing off to the east, but you got a little bit of time before it moves into your area. So the two warnings that we're still tracking across the area, we'll kind of zoom out and give you a big picture look of what we have across the area. So there's that line of storms from Madison all the way down to the Litchfield area with the warnings for the central portion, which includes Metro Louisville down to the south, basically just to the north of the Grayson County line there as you get down towards Hardin County. So it's along that line that we're watching for the possibility of 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. And as I was mentioning, we did get those reports from the Clark County emergency manager of trees and some power lines down as that line moved through Clark County. So definitely causing some pretty gusty winds as that initial line moves through the area that caused some damage. Looks like we had a wind gust at the airport of 54 miles per hour. So that shows you that we are getting some pretty good wind energy along this line as it makes its way through the region. So we'll zoom in and kind of go town by town of where the worst of this is. So here we are across a good portion of Jefferson County. So we'll kind of break this down for you. So here we are. Downtown Louisville, it looks like the worst of it is now through you and is racing off to the east. Lynnview, you're starting to get some of the worst of it. You can see just went over the airport. That's where we had that wind gust of 54 miles per hour. PRP, it looks like the worst of it is moved off to the east for you. Same thing in Valley Station and Shively. New Albany, the worst of it is moved through your area. It's along this leading edge. So the Hurstbourne Acres, probably going to start to see those winds really pick up here shortly. Same thing with J-Town, Fern Creek, and Glen Mary. You're next in line for this line of strong storms to be working in very soon. Hillview, as you get down into portions of Bullitt County, you'll begin to see some of the stronger winds move into your location here very shortly. Excuse me. So this is what we're watching for. We still have these warnings for another 8 minutes or so. Wouldn't be surprised if they extend the warning farther off to the east for the potential of more gusty winds as the system continues to track its way through a large portion of our viewing area here and much of the metro as we go through the next, I would say, we still have an hour to go before this line completely makes its way through the WLKY viewing area. But the good news is, again, the earlier tornado warnings that initially got us on air have since expired. We're just now dealing with these severe thunderstorm warnings that still have the potential of producing some damaging wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. Right along that leading edge as those storms begin to work their way in across much of your location. So we're going to definitely be keeping a very close eye on this. Let's go farther to the south and kind of give you some names of some towns. So as I was mentioning, Radcliffe, you're going to be next in line to start to see some of the stronger winds move through. But as you get down here in the Hardin County, the line's not looking as defined as it did earlier. Still could have some wind gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour, but maybe not up to that 60 mile an hour level that we're seeing here as we move through portions of Jefferson County and North Bullitt County. As that line is moving through, you can see we've really got some of those stronger winds. This is quickly racing off to the east. So Okolona, you're probably getting some pretty strong winds as that initial line moves through. Fairdale, you probably have been seeing some very strong winds here within the last 5 minutes or so as that line is now making its way through your area. So yeah, this line definitely packing its punch, but it's moving through pretty quickly. And so it doesn't last all that long, only 5-10 minutes before it moves through your community. And then things begin to lighten up on the back side of this. But again, that's where we're going to see the drop in temperatures once that initial front moves through. Is we're going to see those temperatures go from the low 70s quickly down into the 50s and eventually the 40s once the rain moves completely out of your area. So that goes to show you how strong of a front this is. Not only is it bringing with it the heavy rain and at times the very gusty winds, it's going to bring that colder air quickly into your area. So those temperatures will be plummeting once it moves through. But again, let's look at the big picture. And the good news is, I would say for pretty much the entire southern Indiana of the WLKY viewing area, you are now in the clear. So if you live in southern Indiana, you are no longer in the severe threat. It looks like the worst has moved through. The line has now moved across the Ohio River and into Kentucky. So we're seeing it work its way now into Oldham County, up into portions of Trimble County. So this is now moving through the Bedford area, getting very close to LaGrange and the Crestwood area. Goshen, you just saw that line move through. But again, as you head your way up 71, you are not under any warnings, as they don't think it's quite as strong the farther north you get. So that is the good news for those that live in portions of Oldham County and work their way up 71 in the Crawford and Trimble County. You are not under any of those warnings as we head through this evening, as this line doesn't look to be quite as bad. Still going to pack a punch with 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts, but not quite as strong as it is here in downtown. And the farther south you go throughout Kentucky and down 65, that's where we're seeing the worst of it. But for those that live up 71 in the portions of Oldham County, and then again as you continue to work further north, not seeing quite as strong of storms, but still getting some wind gusts and some heavy rain near 40 miles per hour. But here we are, still have these warnings across portions of the metro. You can see Fern Creek, J-Town, Hurstbourne, Acres. You are very close to starting to see the worst of the storms pushing into your area here very shortly. Again, the warning that we have that includes a large portion of Jefferson County expires at 10 o'clock. We'll see if they continue to expand that and where they draw the next expansion off to the east where they're thinking the worst of these winds are. But I would definitely say from, Anchorage down through a good portion of the southeastern portions of Jefferson County. And then as you get your way into Bullitt County, that's where we're probably still seeing the worst of it. And then as you continue farther south, you can see Radcliffe. As you get down into Hardin County, you're now beginning to see the worst of it starting to work into you. You're under that warning. That goes for 15 more minutes until 10:15 for this warning as the farther south you get, mainly across Hardin County, that we're seeing it. So that's what we're watching, and that seems to be strengthening a little bit. So I think they'll probably keep that warning all the way until 10:15. Again, along that line, that's where we're going to see those wind gusts anywhere from 50 to 60 miles per hour. Good news is, just got a report here from the National Weather Service. They're not planning to issue another severe warning downstream from Louisville. So it does look like maybe here at 10 o'clock for the one that we have here across a good portion of Louisville, they're not thinking of extending that off to the east. So that means Mount Washington, I don't think you're going to get a warning for you, as they're expecting the line to now be weakening a little bit. They're not quite seeing it quite as strong. They're not seeing the notches or the influxes that brought out these warnings earlier. So it does look like it's starting to come down a little bit, which is some good news. Still could have those wind gusts at times, 50 to 55 miles per hour. Enough to bring down some tree limbs, and if some of those do fall on some power lines, could cause some very isolated power outages as this begins to move through. It's just these very gusty wind systems that we get this time of year when you get the clash of the very hot air mass that we had earlier, say with mid-70s breaking records, and then that colder air coming behind. There's just a lot of wind energy clashing together, causing that severe weather issue that we've been tracking here for the last 45 minutes or so, as this line of storms has been working through the area. So just continue to have your guard up. Again, it's moving rather quickly through our area. So, excuse me, once it does make its way through your community, it's only going to be there 10 minutes for the worst of it. And then things quickly begin to improve once it moves through. It's just that drop in temperatures behind it. But again, it looks like the worst of it has pretty much moved through downtown Louisville, and a good portion of the Waterston is now clear. It's now making its way towards the Gene Snyder. So J-Town, Fern Creek, Glen Meyer, you're starting to see the worst of it starting to push into your area. And then that does include, as you get up into Oldham County, Crestwood, Centerfield, and LaGrange, it looks like that line is beginning to push through your communities here, as well as we now move deeper and deeper into our Sunday evening, as we're getting very close to 10 o'clock here for your Sunday night. So just a very active day across the area with those warm temperatures now leading to these storms that is pushing through. But it does look like some good news is, and as I was mentioning, they're going to probably let this big box that includes a large portion of downtown Louisville to expire here at the top of the hour, and they're not going to issue a new one downstream of it, meaning they're thinking it's beginning to weakening. They're not seeing quite as numerous reports of the strong, heavier, gusty winds. So that is the good news. It does look like things might be trending down here as we move deeper into the night, but still expect some gusty winds as that line initially moves through your area. Some gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour. That could still blow some stuff around, especially out on the patio, or maybe bring down some of those weaker tree limbs that haven't been as strong. And so there you go. You can see we've now hit 10 o'clock. They allowed that warning to expire, which includes much of Jefferson County and the metro, thinking that this is weakening, so they're no longer issuing at the moment downstream. They might change their mind if they see things pulse back up, but it does look like the good news is they're just going to stick with those warnings expiring and not issuing any new ones. So the only current warning that we have is farther to the south as you get down into mainly a large portion of Hardin County for this as it makes its way towards Radcliffe. That goes until another 15 minutes or so, until 10:15 as that line moves through. But it also isn't looking quite as strong as it did earlier in the evening. So hopefully once we get to 10:15, and they'll pretty much probably let this expire too, and that might be the end of the warnings for a little bit. So that would be the good news. But at least this line is quickly racing through the area. So once it does move through your community, it's in and out of there within 5-10 minutes, and then things begin to drastically calm down on the backside to just some light showers, and the winds even come down a little bit. They will pick up, back up overnight as the wind energy on the backside of this still going to be quite gusty, and that's what's going to lead to some very windy conditions for our Monday, along with those colder temperatures. So now that we got this system moving through, the story heading through the rest of tonight and into pretty much a large portion of our Monday and Tuesday is going to be the bitterly cold air. So tomorrow morning, we're talking feel-like temperatures in the single digits. So for those that have to go back to work tomorrow, it's going to be very cold as you step outside the door in the morning. And same thing on Tuesday morning. We're also going to be talking single-digit wind chills. So this is a little bit of that 1-2. First tonight, it's these gusty storms that are moving through the area. And then on the backside, we turn our attention to the bitterly cold winter-like air that's going to be returning after what has been a very mild stretch throughout much of our Christmas. So again, here's the big picture kind of showing where we're at the moment. And you can see a good portion of Metro Louisville, especially downtown, and a good portion of Jefferson County. The worst of the system has already moved through. It's pretty much lining up with 71 as you head into Oldham, and then farther up to the north. Southern Indiana, I would say you're completely in the clear. So that is the good news. Southern Indiana, you are now through the worst of this, and even the rain is pretty much wrapping up. So that's the other thing, is this, we're not getting a ton of rain with this system. Most spots only probably going to pick up 1/4 of an inch of rain. So not even getting a ton of rain with this. This has just been one of those systems that packs a quick little punch with some gusty winds that it initially moves through, a brief round of some heavy rain, and then it's in and out of here pretty quickly. And it does look like now, as we're moving deeper into the evening, we're not seeing quite the instability that we had earlier in the day, and so they're not issuing any more warnings. So that is the good news. The only one we do have is still mainly to the south of town as you get into Hardin County. That's where we're seeing this warning that's still ongoing across a good portion of the area. So again, that includes Radcliffe, and then as you farther to Stevensburg, that's where we're seeing the worst of it move through. And I would say E-Town, you're about now 5 to 10 minutes out from the worst of this moving through your area and getting closer and closer to the 65 corridor, and then it'll be moving off to the east. But again, at the moment, we're not expecting any more warnings to be issued or extended. It looks like things are weakening, so that is the good news, but still could get some wind gusts, 40 to 50 miles per hour as that line initially begins to push through your area. So again, in Jefferson County, that's Glen Mary, Fern Creek, J-Town, Eastwood. That's where you're seeing the worst of these storms, along with Crestwood as you get up into Oldham County. Again, there's that line that we're watching as it's moving through, and it's right along the leading edge of this that we could get those 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts. But as mentioned, we are no longer under any severe thunderstorm warnings for Jefferson County and the Metro, so that is the good news. And as we take a live look outside, you can see it still is raining a little bit, but the camera's not moving as much as it was earlier as those winds are beginning to die down on the back side of that main line. So that is the good news. But I do expect the rain to last for another 10 to 15 minutes here in downtown. As you can see, that line extends back off to the west. But the good news is this line is moving through pretty quickly. They're looking at about 30 mile an hour wind gusts with that passage of the front. So not seeing it quite as strong as it was earlier. So that is the good news. We're no longer seeing those 40 or 50 mile an hour wind gusts. We're just now getting reports closer to 30 to 40 miles an hour. And I think it's because of that the National Weather Service is deciding to hold off on issuing any more warnings at the time, as it does look like that line is starting to come down a little bit as far as the intensity is concerned. And so with this weakening trend, we'll kind of get you back to programming. And if I start to see any more warnings or issues starting to pop up, I'll jump back on air. But with things, for the most part, beginning to wrap up and weakening, I'll kind of send it back to you, get some water, and I'll have the latest updates for you coming up tonight at 11 to talk about the cold air that's going to be coming in behind this front.
We now join our regularly scheduled programming already in progress.